We backed away slowly. I didn't speak. Neither did Elliot. There was no joking about that place. Even a tough mug like me knows when to keep his trap shut. To imagine I've been walking on the streets above for decades, without guessing what was here. Down the well. Jack had betrayed us for some bizarre reason, throwing down our rope into the well and locking me and Elliot here in the tunnels, all the while singing along with his pals. Perfectly sane behavior. Were they all part of some kind of nutty cult, I wondered. Well, I'll worry about that later. Focus on the present, as my daddy used to say. There will always be time for payback. We'd only been down here a few hours by my best guess, but it felt like a damned week. The darkness clung to us, thick and wet, as Elliot and I shuffled through twisting old tunnels of stone. I had no idea why someone would build this kind of maze down here. Smugglers or pirates from old times, most likely. Some of the tunnels stank like something had died in them, which it probably had. And some tunnels had a palpable sense of evil about them that was like nothing I'd ever experienced before. My electric flashlight's beam flickered across decaying mortar, half-carved pillars, and scuttling shapes just out of sight. Elliot had gone quiet, a bad sign. Before, he'd been the nervous chatterbox. Now, he just hissed in pain whenever he tried to put weight on his leg. That run-in with those dog-like ghouls had been something from out of nightmares. They were stealthy, but their nauseous smell gave them away. They came at us from a connecting tunnel. Elliot emptied out his magazine while screaming and hit one or two. I got one good with my trusty shotgun. Then some kind of overgrown bastard with eyes like dead lanterns, some kind of alpha, pushed his way in front of the others. Elliot tried to reload while I hit it at close range, to little avail. It swiped at the lad with its huge clawed arm and got him from the leg up. I wished I'd brought the bayonet, but even so, a headshot from the Model 10 gave even that big fellow pause. We retreated down a black tunnel as quickly as was possible while the beasts were recovering. We had to keep moving. Elliot leaned on me, his breath whistling through clenched teeth. I tried to find someplace safer, a niche in the wall, a half-collapsed archway. Eventually, we hunkered down behind some broken stones while I applied a bandage to his main wound. It's lucky I always bring my little kit to this kind of situation. Hang in there, pal, I whispered. You stay awake, and once we're out of this hellhole, I'll buy you the biggest bottle of whiskey you can stomach. Probably need it after tonight. Elliot tried to smile, but he only looked like a corpse that remembered a joke. I'll say this, I never thought I'd miss the front line trenches. At least those were just mud and bullets. Down here, we had these stinking critters and the sound of something unseen scraping. Once or twice, I caught a smell like rotten fish, too. These tunnels weren't just old. 1700s old if the style of brickwork meant anything. Some parts felt older, like something that had been dug long before Boston ever sprouted above. Pillars leaned at uneasy angles, and carvings on the walls, twisting shapes and runes, suggested this place had been hollowed out by people who prayed to gods no sane man should acknowledge. This place was evil to the core. We moved on. My shotgun was a comfort in my hand. In the war, I'd popped more than a few kraut helmets with it. Here, I'd just as soon stick it under a ghoul's chin. But ammo was limited. I came prepared, but I hadn't expected something like this. I had maybe 3 shells left, tops. I'd fired a few at that big ugly brute who nicked Elliot, but damn thing didn't drop like anything natural would. At least I still had the crowbar. At one point, after following a gently downward sloping tunnel, we turned a corner and stumbled into a chamber that made my skin crawl. It was taller, and the ceiling was lost in darkness. The floor tilted towards a pit in the center, and from that pit a sickly glow seeped up. A pale greenish yellow like curdled moonlight. Elliot, half unconscious, moaned at the sight of it, and I felt my stomach twist. I didn't want to get near it, but curiosity made me take a few steps closer. In that hollow, I swear, I glimpsed something moving. A shape half submerged in what looked like viscous glowing water. Around the rim were carvings of monstrous faces, part man, part beast, mouths twisted into hateful grins. This had to be where Pickman got his sick ideas, the source of his nightmare drawings, some well or portal to hell knows where. If we fell in, or even lingered too long, I suspected we'd see things that would splinter our minds. And those carvings looked ancient, but like nothing I'd ever seen. Anyways, if that bastard Jack and those crazies were part of some cult, maybe this was what they worshipped. I didn't want to dwell on it. Elliot tugged at my arm, sobbing, just wanting to get out. We backed away slowly. I didn't speak, neither did Elliot. There was no joking about that place. Even a tough mug like me knows when to keep his trap shut. To imagine I've been walking on the streets above for decades, without guessing what was here. Outside in the tunnel, I couldn't help but give a small chuckle as my mind procured an image of a crowd of bureaucrats at the mayor's office, trying to wrap their minds about how to deal with something like this. Eventually, after several turns around dark corners, I heard chattering. Human voices, low and murmuring. The shadowy blokes from before had to be the same rats that dropped us down here. I peeked around a corner, saw a flickering lantern, 3 figures in cloaks, their faces hidden, standing guard by what looked like a narrow corridor leading upward. An exit. I prayed it was. Trouble was, they'd see us coming a mile away. Behind us a scrape on the stones. Elliot stiffened, and I turned just in time to see one of those damned ghouls creeping along the floor. It was hunched, like a naked leathery man, but not quite man. Its limbs too long, teeth yellow and irregular. Behind it lurked the bigger one, that alpha ghoul we'd tangled with before. I could see its ugly head was covered in blood. I had 2 choices: make noise and alert the cloaked morons, or stay quiet and get eaten by these freaks. Neither sounded great. "Sorry about this, lad," I whispered to Elliot. "Time for a ruckus." I raised my shotgun, aimed at a stack of rubble in front of the hooded fellows. A single trigger pull boomed like thunder in that cramped space. The shot blasted through the silence, ricocheting off stone, scattering debris. The men cried in pain and confusion, not knowing what hit them. Good, that gave us a chance. The ghouls, startled by the sound, hissed and jerked back. I grabbed Elliot and rushed forward, dragging him with me. He stumbled, nearly pulling me down, but we bolted as fast as we could toward the faint light at the end of that corridor. I heard snarls directly behind me. The alpha lunged, caught hold of the shotgun. I could have tried to save it, but I needed both hands to haul Elliot with enough speed anyway. So instead, adding my strength to the ghouls, I managed to give its ugly snout a good thwack with the handle. The thing was more annoyed than injured, but it bought us precious moments. My old Remington gone to the monsters, hell of a loss. I promised myself I'd come back one day and pump these freaks full of lead all over again. But that was a lie I told to keep myself moving. With all foes behind us, Elliot and I made a break, using our final reserves. The corridor angled upward. The air got fresher. Behind us I heard them shouting in some strange language that made my head hurt. Every few steps Elliot whimpered as I more or less dragged him, his boots scraping stone. Then, sweet mercy, I saw a faint glow of light through wooden boards. I shouldered through, splintering the rotted wood. We stumbled out into an alley so old and narrow, it felt like a coffin. Two of the cloaked men appeared on our heels, seeming a little dazed still, but they soon wished they hadn't followed after I gave them a few good swings with my trusty crowbar. My heart hammered, but we pushed on. We didn't stop moving until we were well away from the alley and on a larger street, bustling with morning crowds. We must have been a sight, dust-covered and bloody. The normalcy of the street and the crowd came as a shock after spending the night in that grim underworld. But we didn't fancy those madmen finding us again, so we shook it off and jumped into a cab to anywhere. I figured we should do something to shake them of our tail if they decided to follow us, so after a bit we quickly switched to another cab and finally went to a hospital in a different direction. I paid the first driver to keep on going and not come back to that area for a while. The doctors gave me looks like they thought I'd done this to Elliot myself and just wanted to avoid charges. But what could I tell them? That a crew of degenerates and subterranean dog cannibals had sliced him up good. That we'd been spelunking in tunnels older than the Republic, dodging nightmares out of some lunatic's painting. In the end, Elliot got stitches and morphine and went into a deep sleep. He'd live, though he might limp for a bit. I promised to check on him when I felt human again. I got a bed in a different ward to rest, but I had no intention of using it. I left that hospital grim and hollow, sneaking away before the cops got there. I had no plans to share our tale with the newspapers or the police. They'd never believe me. But I made another promise to myself. If I ever caught a glimpse of that Jack or any of his cronies, I'd repay them in spades. They might have robbed me of my shotgun, my pride, and nearly my friend's life. But I was still Mickey Rowan. I'd made it out of that maze of horrors alive. I thought it wise to leave Boston for a while, visit my folks while they were still around. And I let Thurber know some evil bastards might be poking about, and he'd better avoid his usual haunts. And if they ever come sniffing around again, there'll be no running. Next time, I'll tear those spooks up for sure. The Transformation. I have given my all and can give nothing more. I now long for those dreaming lands I have visited so many times, both in flickering visions and, on rare nights, in waking reality. Before I was only ever an awkward guest in those lands, an outsider who walked timidly behind those that truly belonged. That ends tonight. I will cast off my fragile humanity and take my rightful place among the pack. A hunter, free at last from all constraints. Members of the Order have already collected my best works. The studio stands hollow now, a husk of boards and brick that shall sleep in darkness for centuries more. I used to feel pity for the uninitiated, those who saw only the shape of terror in my art, never glimpsing the greater design. But tonight, it is not pity I feel. It is hunger. I descend into the tunnels below the well in the old cellar. The air below the well reeks of dank earth. As I climb down, I hear the familiar scraping of claws on ancient masonry. Their eyes glimmer in the gloom. My brethren, ghouls of the deeper tunnels, dwellers who slip between worlds with feral ease. They make room for me, soon the newest, if not the youngest member of the pack. In the chamber of the gate, with its carvings that were old before man set foot in the Americas, we all assemble, The clan chief, huge and powerful with shining eyes, greets me with unusual solemnity and chants the words that wake the power of the portal set in the slanting floor before us. My brethren nods to me and howls and meeps as they run down into the gate's pulsing yellowish light to await me on the other side. The clan chief speaks in his growling voice the words I am to repeat. 3 times I chant that elder verse before he also nods and slips into the light. Now I wait for my acceptance or my doom. It is only moments that pass, but excruciatingly slow moments before bright tendrils of power reach for me and slowly pulls me into the gate's mighty embrace. My skin prickles. The swirling bright tunnel swallows me. It is not as before, not simply a passage, but a transformation. Pain erupts through every cell of my body. My spine arches, nails become talons, teeth lengthen and sharpen. Yet all the while, I exult in this monstrous birth. This final step might be agony, but more than that, it is rapture. In that timeless passage, I know at last the roads to the dreamlands, the subterranean paths that lead to Kadath and even deeper beyond mortal sight. Where once I skulked at the edges, an unworthy guest, I shall now exult running with the pack, devouring those who trespass on our domain. Gone is Richard Upton Pickman, the painter of horrors. In his place stands a ghoul, a creature of the depths, a faithful child of ancient gloom. I leave behind empty frames, cryptic sketches, and a city that cannot understand what has transpired beneath its streets. Let the unsuspecting worry over my disappearance. Let them guess where I have gone. I follow the clan's writhing procession, my eyes sharpened, all my senses awakened, my claws touching moist grass and slick stone. Yes, I have given my all, and in so doing, I have found what I always sought, my true form, my eternal abode, and the savage freedom of the dreamland's dark underbelly.